We'll call the Senate Minerals Committee to order, and we've got people ready to go already so that we can get through all these bills. House Bill 9, Economic Development Programs, Tribal Inclusion is our first bill, and I think we have somebody here to talk about it.
Hello, Chairman Anderson. Thank you for letting me present to you House Bill 9. On your desk, you're going to see a sheet that I printed out, which includes the repealers, and that's the easiest way to start and understand what this bill does. You'll see the language that exists right now in statute for 9-12-601, which deals with the Wyoming Business Ready Community Program, 9-12-805, which deals with tribal participation in the community facilities program, and then 9-12-902, which has similar language regarding the workforce housing infrastructure program. You'll see in this language that the legislature intended for the Business Council to enter into cooperative agreements with the Eastern Shoshone and Northern Arapaho tribes to participate in these three programs. Unfortunately, through the years, there's been some confusion about what the legislature's intent was. Specifically, I believe our Attorney General's office has advised the Business Council that they're unsure of what we meant with cooperative agreements. So what this bill seeks to do is clarify that we want the tribes to be eligible to participate in these programs. So going through the bill, you'll see that where we have those sections clarifying that, for example, on page 3, dealing with the Business Ready Community Program, it says that any city, town, and here's where we make the change, any city, town, county, or the Eastern Shoshone or Northern Arapaho tribe, or the cooperative tribal governing body may submit an application. So really, that's what we're trying to do. The other thing you'll notice is that we acknowledge that in some of the language that we have in existing statutes, we say the Eastern Shoshone tribe and the Northern Arapaho. That's been interpreted to mean that only joint projects or a project that's sponsored jointly by the tribes are those that would be eligible. So the language we've got included in this bill makes it clear that it can either be one tribe or the other, or them working together jointly. You'll also recall that a number of years ago, the tribes operated under a joint business council, which dissolved. They've recently come back together. They now refer to themselves as the Intertribal Council. And so rather than try and keep up with that language, we have language on page 2, which talks about a cooperative tribal governing body, which is intended to be our catch-all, so that if there's a circumstance where the Intertribal Council goes away, but maybe reconvenes as something else, an affiliated model or something like that, we won't need to change the statute and it'll be covered. So with that, Mr. Chairman, that's the bill. I'm not going to walk through the pages, but that's exactly what the bill does.
No, I think that's all right. We have 3 different positions here, but we don't have all those in the bill.
Mr. Chairman, the bill, if we were to walk through it, you would see that we repeal these 3 programs and then make conforming amendments. And so it only involves these 3 programs: the Business Ready Community Program, the Community Facilities Program, Workforce Housing Infrastructure Program. They're all 3 covered in this bill.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Senator Ellis? Any questions?
And I just add, Mr. Chairman, this is an important bill. If the tribes were to apply for a project, right now it is the position of the Business Council that they do not have the authority to award them any funds. So this is important. We do need to address it.
They don't have the authority at all?
They're having difficulty interpreting the term cooperative agreement.
Okay. Any other questions for Senator?
Yeah, and agree.
Yeah.
Agreeably, yes, we're in agreement.
I guess there's no questions for you. Is there any other legislators that would like to speak? I don't see any. Oh, no. All right. Any public that would like to speak on this bill?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Travis McNiven on behalf of the Northern Arapaho Business Council. Senator Ellis did a very good job of laying out the bill, and we are very grateful for the Tribal Relations Committee working this bill during the interim. Certainly very supportive of the cleanup language, the clarifications, and then opening up the potential for economic development even more so, which is certainly needed in that area of the state. And so Northern Arapaho stands fully in support of the bill, and thank you for your time.
Questions for the speaker? No questions? Thank you. Anyone else in the room would like to speak? No? Representative Heiner, welcome to the minerals meeting. Is there anyone on Zoom that would like to speak on this?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Josh Durrell from Laramie and the Wyoming Business Council. I'll bring him in.
Take it away, Josh.
Mr. Chairman, are you able to hear me?
We are.
Okay, Mr. Chairman and Minerals Committee, thank you for giving me a little bit of time. I just wanted to really echo the comments that were made by the gentleman representing the Northern Arapaho Tribe and also Senator Ellis that we really appreciate the work that's been done to clarify this and to make sure that it can be as smooth as any other entity in utilizing the Business Ready Communities program. So we just appreciate the clarity that this will provide and the I guess the ease and the inclusion that we'll get from this. So thank you for your consideration of this today, and I'll stand for any questions if there are any.
Any questions for Mr. Durrell? Any questions? Any questions? Hearing none. Thank you, Mr. Durrell.
Thank you.
That's today. Is that it on Zoom and room? All right. I'll close public comment. Oh, no. I'll close public comment and committee, what's your pleasure? Moved and seconded by a multitude of them. Wasserberger and Cooper. And the third was by White. Okay, any discussion?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I find it rather troubling we should even have to have this discussion. I think it's time to put this to bed and it's gone.
I hope it does put it to bed. Any other discussion? Yeah, that really fixes it. That really fixes it, all right. All right, any other discussion? Any other discussion? Hearing none, let's have some roll call. What do you say, Carla?
Senator Beitman. Senator Cooper. Senator
We
Roberts.
can't hear you.
Aye.
Senator Wasserberger. Chairman Anderson.
Aye.
5 ayes, do pass.
That squeaked by the Senate Minerals Committee. Yeah.
Happy promises.
Yeah. All right, next bill to come before the Senate Minerals Committee is House Bill 70, Digital Identity Protection.
Mr. Chairman.
Everybody wants to know about that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
This is a very short and direct bill. It comes from the Blockchain Select Committee, but might have wanted to be a Judiciary Committee bill, but that's okay because it's simple and straightforward. It is simply recognizing we've created a new definition for digital identity, whether that's personal digital identity or organizational digital identity. And this incorporates into our impersonation statutes, which are already existing and unchanged, the idea of impersonation of digital identity. So it's fully consistent with statute. It just provides for the opportunity to seek remedy and potential prosecution for impersonation of a digital identity, whether that's organizational or personal. And you can see that it's fully consistent with existing statute for impersonation. And Senator Nethercott is a member of the Blockchain Select Committee, so she's worked through it. That's the bill.
Any questions of the presenter of the bill? Questions of the presenter? Hearing none. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
So, Mr. Chairman, just a question on page 3, lines 1 through 8, where we make the determination of what the penalty is. How did you come up with that? I'm assuming that you looked at Senator Nethercott, you looked at other areas of statute to try to comply with this.
Mr. Chairman and Senator Wasserberger, that's existing statute. So all we did was in that penalty, unlawful impersonation through electronic means, which we just put that in 5 years ago, maybe, something like that, the impersonation through electronic means. We tacked on the clause or that person's personal or organizational digital identity to make it clear that it would cover that. And then the definitions that you see below are just a reference back to the legislation we passed last year, which created those concepts. So nothing new there. There's really nothing new here. You would almost expect it to already be in statute, but it's not. So there you go.
Other questions? Other question here.
Mr. Chairman, question on, I don't have 81102 handy. It's not in reference in the bill. Could you give us a recap of what personal digital identity means?
Mr. Chairman,
Thanks.
those definitions, which we did have them in front of us, maybe, but the internet doesn't work in here very
Do
well.
you have your green book?
Yeah, it'll have to be the brand new one since we just passed it. I don't know if we've got new enough ones. But Senator Beitman,
You can give me the clip.
it was like the entirety of a lot of off-season work in defining a digital identity because it's kind of an important concept, but it's basically an individual acting of, by, and through their digital person where they have control of it. So some things are and some things aren't. When you're making elective decisions online as yourself, then that's going to govern it. When it's somebody else kind of collecting data about you, it probably won't. I don't know if it's going to be in there. That'll have to be a new book.
Mr. Chairman, would it
81102.
include like spoofing somebody's social media?
Yes.
Okay, that answers that.
Yeah, your social media is you
Your
as your
digital
identity. So this, if you were spoofing someone's social media, you have now gotten into this realm.
Other questions of the presenter? Other questions of the presenter? Hearing none. Is there any input from the public? Public comment.
Chairman, members of the committee, I'm Tom Laycock with AARP Wyoming. We're obviously very supportive of the bill and just wanted to say thank you for looking into this issue and moving it forward this year. Unfortunately, my members have a tendency to be fall prey to some of these scams and fraud, and very much appreciate anything that we can do to keep them safe.
Thanks, Tom.
Mr. Chair, my name's Dave Groover. I'm doing this on behalf of LSO. I'm no longer an LSO employee. But I talked to Matt Obrecht over the summer and thought, when I graduated from law school, when he did, we had no idea who the LSO was. No idea how the legislature worked. It really hadn't, no legislative class. And so he talked and we had the idea of the LSO teaching a law school class on legislation. And so the LSO is teaching part of it, and the staff at UW is teaching the other part of it. And the law school class is here today. I didn't mean to interrupt your meeting, but the point was so much work of the legislature is done in committee, so we thought it was really important to get them to see how a committee operates and how you work a bill, Mr. Chairman. And so that's the point of it, is to get the law school students to understand the legislature a little better, and maybe help the LSO identify law school students that you want to recruit in the future for working at LSO.
thank you for bringing them to the best committee in the legislature. Dave, good choice, really, yeah. Yeah, they'll learn a lot here. Yeah.
Well, we learned that you're efficient anyway.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Dave. Any other public comment on this bill? Digital identity protection. We're doing it. Is there anybody on the Zoom that would like to speak to this?
No, Mr. Chairman.
No Zoom, no room? All right, we're going to close public comment. So you can't talk anymore. That's what that means. The committee, what is your pleasure? Moved by Was, seconded by,
I'll second it.
yeah, by Ross, and thirded by, any comment, any changes, deletions, additions to this bill? Now, see, what we always do is go by every page and see what's on every page, and if anybody wants any changes. Any change of 1, 2, 3, thank you. So, that's done. Good work. Oh,
We should do a roll call.
we should do a roll call, shouldn't we? So we always have to do a roll call on the bill, and sometimes I miss that. So let's call a roll on this one.
Senator Beitman. Senator Cooper. Senator Rothfuss.
Aye.
Senator Wasserberger. Chairman Anderson.
Aye.
That's 5
So-
ayes, do pass House Bill 70.
House Bill 70 squeaked by the Minerals Committee. And who would like to present that on the floor? Senator Rothfuss?
Yeah.
Yes, and I'm thinking that that other one will be Senator Ellis.
Yep.
We won't need to do that one. I don't know, I think we do. We've got till 2:30, so we have one more bill. We're gonna jump right into it. House Bill 47 engrossed, which that means they made changes in the other house. Local impact assistance payments is what this bill says it's about. And we've got Representative Heiner here to tell us about it. 1 second.
Engrossed is green, these are white, that's how you know. This has been amended by the House.
That'll probably all be changed when you get
That's
here,
on your
but
test.
yeah, that'll be on your
I
test.
asked ahead.
Representative Heiner,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
yes.
Appreciate the opportunity of being here in the best committee of the Capitol.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's my pleasure and honor to bring you House Bill 47. As you are very familiar with this bill, this is something that we worked on in the interim. In 1975, the 43rd Legislature created the Office of Industrial Siting Administration. That's within the Department of Environmental Quality. And what it does is oversees the construction of large industrial facilities in the state of Wyoming. And then the Department of Revenue distributes the state sales and use tax revenues by an amount determined by the Industrial Siting Council to the county treasurers for dispersal to the cities, counties, and towns impacted by the project. As we heard during the interim through a study that the LSO performed for us, a research project, Wyoming is the only state that provides payments to local governments to address impacts from large industrial projects. So in 2015, the rules were modified, which resulted in larger awards being given out to the cities, counties, and municipalities. In the 5 years prior to that rule change, the Industrial Siting Council gave out a total of $10 million, or about $2 million a year. In 2018 alone, the Industrial Siting Council awarded $34.8 million. And in 2019, the Industrial Siting Council awarded $33.9 million. So you can see that the amount of awards has been driven exponentially over the past few years. In fact, the chairman of the House Appropriations stated in 2020, and I have permission to quote him, "We had no idea how much this was going to sap out of our general fund dollars. We went from not awarding enough to awarding way too much." So last session in 2021, the Senate passed Senate File 82 by a vote of 27-3, which amended this act. The House did not have time to hear that because the session drew to a close before we could hear that on chamber floors. But the year prior, in 2020, the House passed House Bill 237 on a vote of 50-7 for similar amendments. So you can see there's broad support for amending the Industrial Siting Act and fixing some things that are causing consternation amongst us. So going to the bill, senators, Mr. Chairman, and members of the Senate committee, on page 3, lines 11 through 15, what this does is requires that the ISC provide specific findings of fact detailing the basis for the dollar amount determination. And if requested, they also provide details of why that request was denied. Now, the amendment was a standing committee amendment that changed on line 13 from applicant to counties, cities, and towns to make it a little bit more clear that if they request some justification why the award was not granted, then they can ask the ISC for justification for that. So you turn the page to page 4. This is where a lot of the changes happened. This is a 3-tiered approach for future awards that was proposed. And that tiered approach is for those projects less than $350 million. The ceiling or the maximum impact is then 2.25% of the material cost of the project. For those projects that are larger than 350 million and up to 850 million, that maximum amount ceiling is 2%. And then anything over $850 million, the maximum amount is 1.5%. Now currently, that ceiling is 2.76. And where did that 2.76 come from? That's the state share of the sales and use tax. It's 4% times 0.69, so that's state share. So what we tried to do is bring the sideboards in to these awards without severely impacting our cities, counties, and towns by reducing the amount that they are getting. So you can look forward and say, okay, what will the impact be on future projects with these 3-tiered lower ceiling amount? But we don't know what those projects are. So it's hard to do an economic analysis in the future, not knowing what the projects are and how large they are. So in these situations, you do what's called a look-back analysis. So you look back, what would have been the impact if these 3 tiers were in effect over the past couple of years. So to give you a feel for that, Chairman and members of the Senate committee, in 2018, if these tiers would have been in place, it would have reduced the total amount by $404,000. And the total award during that year was $34 million. So it would have dropped at about 1%. In 2019, with these lower awards, it would have reduced it by $270,000. And that year, a total of $33.9 million was awarded. So it would have reduced it 0.7%. So very small amount. It just snugs it up a little bit, okay? So then on page 4, towards the bottom, our county commissioners organization asked for a relief valve because most of the projects are in that lower tier, the $350 million or less. And so in the event that the 2.25 is not enough, you'll see on lines 20 through 23 that the Industrial Siting Council can award up to 2.55%, but they just have to report back to this committee and the JAC within 10 days the reasoning for doing that. So it gives a relief valve in the situation where the smaller amount is just not enough for the impacts. Page 5, lines 8 through 13, it allows adjustments based on location, population, and smaller communities. We've heard of some some problems they've caused in the past where these projects spans county lines and some of the smaller communities were not, they felt were not addressed properly for the impact. So that allows the Industrial Siting Commission to take into consideration populations of small communities. And finally, on page 6, it requires an annual report from the counties. This is a big part of this whole bill is accountability and transparency, because right now these awards are given and there's no feedback where the money is actually spent. So this requires that the county provide the Industrial Siting Council an annual report where those grant monies were actually given. And we're all familiar with grants. Usually when you get a grant, you have to report where you spend the money. Well, with this program as it is right now, there's no reporting structure. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I will stand for any questions.
Is there any questions from Senator Rothfuss?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative, it's my understanding that there was one amendment in the House and it was applicant becomes counties, cities, and towns. Was there anything else?
No. That was the only one that, sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Senator Rothfuss, that was the only one that passed was a standing committee amendment. There was another amendment to raise the lower tier from 1.5 up to 1.75, and it failed.
Okay, thank you.
The reason he's talking to me is it's a conversation between the chairman and the presenter. If we let him talk to the other people, we sometimes get conversations going that we can't control. So they always address the chair. Yes, Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Heiner, do you remember back in the interim committee why we came up with the 2.55 rather than leaving it at 2.76?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Senator Cooper, amendment came forward and we voted it down because the 2.55, well, let me give you some numbers. Maybe that will help, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead. Yes.
So in 2019, on these big projects, we're talking the big ones now, I tried to go back and find projects that fit into that category, and we haven't had very many. So there's only 2 that fit in that category in 2019. One was the Trans-West transmission line, and the total award there was 0.94%. And then the other project was the Two Rivers Wind Project, and the total award was 1.35%. So as you get into these larger projects, looking backwards in time, they didn't need as much of the percentage. And so that's why we felt like 1.5 was adequate just looking back. It provided enough.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand that on the larger projects, but on the smaller projects, the 350 million
Oh,
and less is where we were questioning the 2.55 to 2.76. The total amount, I think, comes to that it could possibly is 735,000.
yeah. Mr. Chairman, I apologize. I strayed. You're right, Senator. So I'll give you a couple of examples in that lower category, recent ones. There's one, the Exxon carbon capture project. It was, total award was 2.2%. And then the Tronomine, Jenner Tronomine was 2.37. So that fell over the 2.25, but still just barely. So the 2.25 to 2.55 gives a little bit more leeway without going all the way. I know the county association wanted to go all the way up to 2.76, but this standing committee, we did not vote in favor of that.
Follow up? Other questions for Representative Heiner? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Heiner, you know, I appreciated the analysis you gave early on about kind of the amount of money that this would be if you looked retrospectively. And I don't know if we had that conversation or remember it from the Minerals Committee, but I could have stepped out or something. But it sounds like you've got 1 year 0.7% and another year around 1% of difference on the total budget 34, 33 million down to a few $100,000. That to me then begs the question a little bit about adding this additional complexity of having multiple tiers with different caps. When you recall, I was struggling to see how this was solving the problems that we have, where you and I agree there are giant problems. We agree on that. But I was struggling in the Minerals Committee meetings to see how this was resolving any of the problems that I see. And now actually the data that you brought kind of makes me think that even more, where it sounded like everything worked, like within the context of as well as it can. What are your thoughts about changing the complexity? The reporting requirements I see, but the complexity of adding multiple tiers, why is this better?
Mr. Chairman, Senator Rothfuss, I appreciate that question. I've asked that question myself. Are we doing everything that needs to be done here? Or are we just putting a Band-Aid over it? In my mind, what the reporting structure is important. That's a key element of this proposed bill, to require the agencies to report. Also, the definition of what is unmitigated versus mitigated, those are very key to this bill. The changing the tiered approach, that was something we wanted to do to bring the sides of the corral closer, or the sides boards closer. The tiered approach was something that the county commissioners organization brought to us, which we thought was a great idea. Just gives more structure to the cities, counties, and towns as they come forward with their impact requests. It gives them a little bit more structure instead of just one size fits all.
The concern I have had there, though, is that the dollars are not the key factor necessarily in determining what the appropriate percentage is. It's more about the nature of the project. I mean, $1 billion data center near Cheyenne. I don't know how much more Cheyenne needs to buy for $1 billion data center being parked near Cheyenne. So you're going to look at that, and I realize it's a ceiling, but when you look at it, I would assume that you'd end up with a relatively low percentage. At the same time, you might have a facility that only gets to the 1.5% that's available in this, but is the first of its kind, we'll say, petrochemical synthesis facility near a community that has one small fire truck arbitrarily. I need a lot as that community to start thinking through all of the potential contingencies and how to provide the community support. Plus, I'm going to have maybe hundreds of jobs, and if it's a small community. So to me, when I think about this, as an engineer, there's no link between the value of the project necessarily and the percentage I need. It has more to do with the project specs than the dollars, as well as the community specs, depending on what their capacity currently is. I mean, I can only imagine what it would be like if you did build one of those petrochemical synthesis facilities next to Matiti, for example. It's going to be a struggle, but not much of a struggle if it's right next to, down the street from the Sinclair refinery or something along those lines. Those kinds of things matter more than the dollar value. So I guess I remain concerned about selecting the dollars as the key concept of determining what the maximum percentage is. Whereas right now, and I know you have concerns about leaving it at 2.76, that's just a ceiling. So it literally will be a process that takes into consideration all of the factors that are available to the EQC or the industrial siting board as part of that process. So again, I'll ask, how is it better if we set up the tiers than just allowing the full process to determine what the appropriate amount is based on the circumstances instead of the value of the project?
Did you get the question?
I think so.
Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Senator Rothfuss, you touched on something that has become part of the problem. as these large projects are being built out away from infrastructure, the state is paying a lot of that cost of mitigation. Buying a fire truck, if you bring in a chemical plant or something that does, requires foam instead of water, the state has been buying these, building roads, doing some of the mitigation that should be paid by industry. And so that's why this bill also further defines what is unmitigated impact, which is the overtime for our first responders. It's the overtime or the additional cost to maintain that road that the industry has to build to get into their new plant, and all of the unmitigated impacts. We want the businesses to carry the impacts that they are causing as much as possible. Now, what this does with the dollar is it kind of puts sideboards that are a little bit closer for our cities, counties, and towns, and the 7 members of our Industrial Siting Council, that they can realize that with these larger projects, maybe we don't award the full 2.76 or the full amount, because it is multi-billion-dollar projects that we didn't see early on in 1975 when this was initially envisioned. So while it doesn't make severe impact to the awards in the past, it just brings it closer so that those sideboards are snugged up against what we've been given in the last few years. Hopefully that answers your questions.
Yes, go ahead.
Just a final thought. Again, I'll just reiterate that you and I think the rest of the committee agree that the system doesn't work particularly well right now and needs a lot of improvement. I think, as we discussed earlier this summer, it needs to be a full, in my view, interim topic where we literally start by scrapping industrial siting and then rebuilding based on best practices in other states. My concern here, though, is the bill in front of us. I'm trying to figure out where it's improving, and I see places of improvement, no question, with reporting, the unmitigated impact, and some of the other provisions. But the one that I just keep going back to struggling with is changing the ceiling of 2.76% rather than just leaving it up to the discretion based on calculations. So I appreciate your thoughts on that, but that's the one I'm still struggling with. Everything else I see that it's moving us in the right direction.
That was a compliment from Senator Rothfuss for the good work you guys have done.
I was trying to find the question in there, Chairman.
No.
I don't always have a question.
It was just a compliment. Any other questions?
Don't you agree?
Yes,
Yeah.
I was waiting for that, yes. Thank you.
Any other questions for the presenter? Other questions? No? Thank you, Representative Heiner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members.
Yep. Any other public comment on this bill? Senate or House Bill 47? And there is.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Luke Esch. I'm the Deputy Director of the Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality, as well as the Administrator of the Industrial Siting Division. The division has no problem with the bill. We feel like we can implement it. And aside from my disagreement with Senator Rothfuss that the process isn't working, I think the program does do a lot of benefits and returns a lot of benefits to the local governments in anticipation of large industrial projects. With that, I would stand for questions.
I bet you're going to get some.
Well, just to clarify, I think you're doing a great job of implementing it. I just think that we built a program unlike every other state, where the state is fully responsible for all of the payments for mitigating circumstances. Don't know why we chose that path, but it's a strange path that nobody else has chosen. So you're doing a great job of implementing the statute. You always do a great job, Luke. Wouldn't you agree?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Any other questions for Luke?
That's right.
Other questions for Luke? Luke, thanks for being with us here today. I think that's the same one I handed out. too.
You have this? I don't have that.
We actually should hand that to the secretary so she can hand them out, but that's all right. Did you get one? Okay. Hi.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Jeremiah Riemann here on behalf of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. Appreciate your time on this issue. As I did in the House Minerals Committee, I want to compliment Representative Heiner and Representative Larson for working with me on this issue over the interim. There's much that we do agree about this bill and that we've helped to craft here. We certainly support adding the definition of unmitigated impacts. That's a positive thing that will go a long way in providing local governments as well as the Industrial Siting Council some guidance on applications. Second, as we have since 2019, we support adding the reporting requirement. It's something my members have been willing to do, and in good faith, I provided you some of that information during this interim. And some of our members have, in fact, as part of their process, given voluntary consent to providing that, despite the fact that the division has already told us they don't have the authority to ask for it. So we support that particular provision. In terms of the tiers, that is also something that we have supported. As you all have been working and as I have been working on this issue the past couple of years, we've expressed concern about just moving the number down, the 2.76%. And we've done that with the thought process that in particular for the smallest of the projects, and I know small is all relative when we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars here, but for those projects, they're often the hardest for local governments to react to because they don't generate the same sort of sales and use tax or other revenues at the local level that much larger projects do. And that's why we initially proposed the tiered structure, where if we could maintain the 2.76 for those smaller projects, we felt we could give more on the larger projects because, again, they don't require as much mitigation generally as a rule. And I think that's been borne out over time. In terms of the bill that's before you, there's one issue that Representatives Larson and Heiner and myself agreed to disagree on during the interim, and that's what I come to ask for your consideration and support around. And that is the relief value for those projects that are $350 million and less. So let me tell you why we think that is so important. First off, there's been this sense that the local governments always remain whole in this equation, that local governments will have the additional resources to address that issue. That isn't necessarily true. If you are, let's say, Carbon County and materials are dropped in Natrona County, the sales and use tax on that property is paid in Natrona County. So Natrona County and the state remain whole in that equation, and Carbon County gets all of the impact associated without that benefit. The same could be said if we were to have a project in, say, Crook or Weston counties and it was delivered to Campbell County. So we've always felt that in particular for those smaller projects, we had to have a relief valve. Second, as some of you have mentioned, and as is demonstrated in the spreadsheet that I gave you, for those smaller projects, we're only talking about a difference between 2.55 and 2.76% of $735,000. Now, to just give you a sense of what we feel we're giving up in this equation with this tiered system, there is a Trona project that is being proposed for the very near future at $1.64 billion. That particular project at 2.76% would be eligible for a local government payment of $45.3 million. Under the tiered system that's before you, at 1.5%, that project or local governments are only eligible for 24.6. So that's a decrease, a difference of over $20 million. We feel we've given quite a bit in this equation. That roughly estimates out to about 65% decrease for that one project in particular. So we are asking for your consideration. The last thing that I'll mention around this particular point, and again, requesting your consideration of the amendment that I've put forward before you, is that if a project is awarded more than the 2.25% that's under this bill, they have to provide you, the Industrial Siting Council will have to provide you a report. You're going to know when that happens. For some context, in the last 4 years, that's only happened once, where it's gone to the full 2.76%, and that's in 2018 with the Boswell Springs project. So it does occasionally happen where the council does determine that a higher amount is necessary. With that, I just wanted to address one question or comment that Senator Rothfuss had. As it relates to the tiers, we did during the interim request that there also be a relief valve for those particular levels. At the lowest level in the bill, this gives the Industrial Siting Council the authority to make that change. We understood that maybe that was too far a leap for some to give that authority to the Industrial Siting Council, because many might question what changes in the bill. And so we actually had asked that at least there be a relief valve to come to you if the Industrial Siting Council said that they thought in their perspective that it demanded additional resources. Unfortunately, that was rejected. Still interested in that concept, but also understand that if a small community was in that situation, I think you would probably take it up and give it some consideration. With that, Mr. Chairman, I would stand for any questions, but certainly appreciate your consideration of the amendment that I've presented to you.
And they do want to speak.
Mr. Chairman, Justin Schilling with the Wyoming Association of Municipalities. Senator Rothfuss asked the right question. If we're keeping things within these parameters now, is the process not working correctly? Our fear as the municipalities of Wyoming is that we're going to come back a couple years from now and see that these new benchmarks will have significantly reduced what the awards would have been on average per project at the different tiers. The Industrial Siting Council has been charged with vetting these requests, and I think the obvious expectation of them is that they do go through these things with a fine-tooth comb, and if the maximum ask is 2.76, I think the expectation is that they don't meet that 2.76 very often, or questions get asked about whether or not this has become a rubber stamp process. So by lowering those thresholds, by going down to the 2.25, the 2, and the 1.5, while in the past, in looking at those rearward looks, it appears that we're very, very close. But with the new tiers, we believe it's going to be, there will be a chilling effect that will bring those amounts down even further. Obviously, from an Industrial Siting Council standpoint, we agree with Senator Rothfuss that this is a project that's probably bigger than this bill, and hopefully will be an ongoing conversation. Our members hope to be at that table so that we don't end up on the menu in that particular conversation. But I think we understand, though, too, that, and we appreciate the time, obviously, that Representative Heiner and Representative Larson spent on this in the interim. I think but at the same time, even if you spend a really long time
crafting a bandage for yourself, sometimes it's worth recognizing that you need stitches. With that, I'd stand for any questions.
Any questions for Justin? Any questions for Justin? Any questions? Nope, none. Thank you, Justin.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else to come before the Senate Minerals Committee on House Bill 47? House Bill 47. Is there anyone in Zoom that wants to speak? Nobody in Zoom? Nobody in Zoom? Nobody in the room? We'll close public comment. Committee, what's your pleasure? Moved by Cooper, seconded by Beitman. Any discussion? Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. My preference would be to take out the tiered system, leave the limit of 2.76 in place, and then leave the rest of the structure of the bill in place so that it does all of the good pieces about unmitigated impact and reporting and a lot of the other provisions. I think that's a stronger outcome. And again, I still think we would want to look at this in the interim. And that's an amendment that I could do, but I see what if the committee wants that, we can do it. If the committee doesn't want that, if the committee likes it, Bo likes it now. Okay. Ed, where you at?
Go ahead. Senator Cooper.
Mr. Chairman, I feel like we put a lot of work into this in the interim. There's a group effort. I just leave it as it is for right now and move forward.
Okay. And you're saying? Okay. Then no amendments.
I have an amendment that would do exactly that. I guess we ought to vote on it, see what we think. I guess I hear that maybe it won't pass, but.
I got that sense.
Yeah, I got that sense too. But the counties are kind of feeling like these smaller projects are a problem for the counties. 4 counties say there's that issue is that 2.76. They're saying the Industrial Siting Council has been a good steward, but since 2018, they've awarded 62% of the maximum allowable award, approximately 48 million less than the counties and municipalities were eligible for. You heard from the county that some counties don't get that sales tax. All they get is the Industrial Siting Council money because the product is delivered in a different county and they get the sales tax. Now that has actually happened with Natrona County, and we've received the sales taxes, and the other county only received the industrial siting money. The handout I think that you got shows that that 2.55 to 2.76 could be a possible $735,000. But of course, it's up to the council to determine if they're going to get that much. All this does is raise it to that limit. It could go to that limit. And for the smaller counties, this is really a big deal to get that up there, and so they get a little more money. And on this chart that you got shows the $350 million projects, and that's at 735,000 that could be more for the smaller counties. So that is a big deal for the counties, and I'd like to have us address that if we could. I'd move the motion. Oh, excuse me. The motion is on page 4, line 15, delete the 5500s. On page 4, line 16, delete 2.55 and insert 2.76. It's a little bit misrepresented there. Then on page 11, line 4, delete 5500s, and on page 11, line 5, delete 2.55% and put in 2.76. So it's a simple amendment, something that would really help the smaller counties. The larger counties mostly have the larger projects that they're getting rewarded quite nicely for, but the small counties sure aren't. So I would move that amendment.
I'll second it.
And moved and seconded. Any discussion? Any discussion? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to be clear, that's just for the $350,000 projects or smaller. Is that correct?
Yep.
350 million.
350 million, yeah. Yeah.
Correct.
That's all that changes. We could change it completely like Senator Rothfuss says, but the county, the 4 counties, smaller counties said, we really need some help. Other questions? Other questions? Other questions? Hearing none, I don't think this is
No
a roll call, is it? It's just a voice vote. All in favor of the standing committee amendment on House Bill 47, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign?
Same sign.
Same sign, all right. So 4 to 1, 4 to 1 on the same sign. So that standing committee amendment does pass, and so that'll be a part of the bill in the Senate. Who wants to carry this in the Senate? Volunteers, volunteers? Oh, no,
No, it ended up being minerals.
it's just minerals.
Mr. Chairman, did anyone work with you, Representative? It was the House side, okay.
Well,
I'm not the world's biggest enthusiast of it, but I can carry it. I mean, I do a respectable job, but if somebody who loves this bill wants to, then step up.
you want to love it, Was?
I know what it does.
one last meeting, Mr. Chairman.
I
Well,
know,
we'll
I know
say-
what it does.
We'll say Rothfuss
All
for
right,
now, and then
yeah.
we'll see what happens
And-
here.
and
We might
if-
have somebody who wants.
Representative Heiner, if you wanna go to Jim after the meeting and say, "Oh, for the love of God, don't let Rothfuss do it," that's good. That's a perfectly reasonable decision.
We'll
to
maybe find
make.
somebody else who has a passion for this.
Oh, but we probably have to vote on the bill too.
Yeah, now we need to vote on the amended bill, but that is a roll call.
That'll
Is there
be
any
a
other
roll call.
discussion on the amended bill? On the amended bill?
So we just changed the lower limit, right?
Yep, the 350 million
Yeah, that was the only one that was changed.
so far. Yep. All right, let's have a roll call on it.
Senator Beitman. Senator Cooper. Senator Rothfuss.
Aye.
Senator Wasserberger. Chairman Anderson.
Aye. So House Bill 47, local impact assistance payments squeaked by the Senate committee here. That was it. We got through and we're making the 2:30 call from the Senate. So thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being